Alrighty. Jen, did you want to start off?
Yeah. So just welcome everybody to the IxDF Tempe meetup again. We really appreciate you joining us. I just want to introduce Saba and her talk about geology to UX, Tales from a Career Switcher. And I'm really excited to see what you have to present today, Saba.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm really excited to present this today. It's been a journey, as you can probably tell from the title. It's been a journey from geology to UX. And so I just wanted to share my journey with all of you and hopefully give you some tips if you're interested in also making that career switch to UX. And so hopefully you get something out of this. So first, I want to ask you guys to put in chat, what do you want to gain from this talk? Just so that I know, what I should be speaking to. I have a talk prepared, but I would like to at least tailor it towards what the audience is looking for. So just take some time if there's something specific you're really wanting to gain from this, and so that I can just learn more. Trying to be user-centered here. So I'm seeing, let's see here. Case study about how you can switch from something seemingly unrelated to UX. What are the best ways to demonstrate my skills to employers/recruiters? How you built your portfolio, approaches for networking, portfolio development, and mentorship programs, +1 on the portfolio. Okay, so some portfolio things, how you can leverage your skills to be UX related, approaches for networking, mentorship, all good things. And I think I should have all of those things in here. Maybe not as in depth right now, but we can definitely get into it more with questions at the end. So without further ado, let's get into it. So
whatever.
What the agenda is I'm going to go through my past experience before UX, how I decided on UX, some of my learning strategies, how I landed my job, and lessons learned, some tips for you all. And then I'm going to be creating some career courses for people to look into after this. And so I'll talk a little about that, but I mostly want to give enough time for your questions. I want this to be interactive and for you to get the most out of this. So first I want to start off, this is kind of the theme of how I got to where I am is, people have heard this before, success is when opportunity meets preparation.
Right, you know that,
and
right?
I feel like, I prepared as much as I could, but also you need the opportunities. You need to find those, opportunities.
No, that's only when
and they need to find
decide.
you. And so
you're out of your fucking mind, dude.
Everybody could mute their microphones.
How much did you put? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you were a real man. Are you a real man?
Sarah, if you could mute your microphone.
Okay, how's your cat?
Oh.
Dead cat. Wait.
So, sorry about that. So when I was young, I wanted to be a volcanologist when I grew up. And so that's kind of what led me to want to be a geologist and get a degree in geology. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, right? And so I went through school to become a geologist. And so then I went to undergrad at Vanderbilt and got my Earth and Environmental Sciences degree there. Then I went to grad school at Western Washington and got a geology degree there. And I always focused on research, particularly. And so that's always been a thing for me too. I always really liked researching. Um, and then after school, I did another research job as a research communicator for a summer at Rocky Mountain National Park. And then after that, I was at the Arizona Department of Water Resources for 2 years, just working with their water conservation program. And so that also entailed more user um, aspects that were similar to user research. There was a lot of other aspects to it that weren't, but that was something that I definitely leveraged a lot that I did at that job to move over to UX. So that's just a little bit about my background. But there was something missing from that job and from past jobs. So, I was, a young kid wanting to be a geologist, became a geologist, got there, and I felt like there was something missing, and there wasn't a lot of creativity in the role. It was kind of like step by step, this is what you need to do, and that's it. Um, there was research, like I was saying, but there was a lot of other parts to it that weren't as research focused. And then where I was, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for career growth. Um, and then I just wanted to be in a space that was all about helping people solve problems. And so how I decided on UX was I, came to this realization that something was missing. And so I sat down and did this purpose Venn diagram, and you might have seen this before. I had not seen it before that time, so I thought it was super helpful. And so all it is you think about and write down, what are you good at, what do you enjoy doing, what does the world need, what can you be paid to do, and then there's that one little overlap between all of those things that tells you that's something you should go towards. And so that's how I came to UX. It really was, I like researching, I'm good at it, and people pay to research. And then also, like, I wanted to work with people, like help people with their problems, and I also wanted creativity, and so it really led me to say I want to do UX. And so my journey in a nutshell was basically I almost immediately, like once I made that decision that I was going to get into UX, I looked at everything I could possibly look into of like different groups to join. And I thought of mentorship as being super important. And I still think that. And so I found UXPA, User Experience Professionals Association mentorship program, and it's completely free if you are a member. So you just have the membership fee, but then once you're a member, it's free, and it's 3 months. And you're paired with someone that has, I think it's at least 10 years experience. And yeah, it was an awesome experience for me. We met once a week for an hour. I could ask my mentor anything in that amount of time. That's a lot of time to ask someone that, is in the field that you want to get into. And so that helped me a lot with like my goals and strategies of how I wanted to go further into this career. And then from there, I found an internship, and how I found that, I'll go into that more. But that was 3 or 4 months, and it was a UX design internship at a startup um, online education space company. And that was also great. Definitely got a mentor out of that. My boss was really, like, he was always there to have one-on-ones when I had questions about how to use a tool, or, what are the ways to think about this problem in a user experience way. And then something that was pretty pivotal was I did a mock interview with a program that's specifically connects you to UX designers and researchers, and you get to have this mock interview and practice your interviewing skills. And I met Allison, who's on the call, and she was a great mentor and also a great person to like expand my network. And she sent out my information to some people in her network, and that's how I got in touch with someone that works at Target. And then from there, that's how then I got into the target interview process. And then around the same time too, I started to take on client projects and volunteer projects that were UX based, just to give myself a little bit more, practice. So that's in a nutshell the journey. And then I'll drill down in these next slides. So throughout this whole time, I wanted to learn as much as possible on a budget. I didn't want to spend a lot of money. And I know, and you probably know this as well, that boot camps can be pretty pricey. They're effective. I think that they do a good job of teaching people the concepts that are needed. I just couldn't couldn't do it with money wise. So I, first looked at YouTube, and they have, so many people that talk about UX and their transition from some other type of job to UX, how you do it, or just like honestly, any question you have about UX, you can probably find someone talking about it on YouTube, which is great. And then Interaction Design Foundation, which is where we are right now. They have online courses, and it's a small fee per year to have access to these courses. And then they have these meetup groups for your local chapters. So this is the Interaction Design Foundation's Tempe, Arizona chapter. And then Coursera, you can get free courses there. You can pay the fee if you want, but also you can do it for free. Medium has tons of articles, tons and tons of articles, different books. Like I mentioned before, UXPA International's mentorship program is great. It rolls. It's like 3 months long, and I think they do it every quarter of the year. So you apply, and then you'll be put into it for that following quarter. And then joining UX groups. Those were basically my learning strategies. And I feel like I got all the things I would get out of a boot camp just about, because, they have the mentorship, they have all the courses. I'm trying to think what else there is, the different, assignments that they have for you to practice the skills. So, this was kind of my self-learning strategy. And so I'll give you a couple of YouTube recommendations that I use more often. Career Foundry, which is a boot camp, also has a lot of videos on YouTube that I've watched, and they're kind of more like, what is this? Like, they explain what exactly is maybe a research method or like a UX concept. And then Kevin Lang, his channel I think is called Zero to UX, and he's very much like gives you hands-on suggestions of how to go from. He was a researcher of some other sort, I don't remember, but he wasn't a UX researcher, but how to get from that to a UX researcher. So he comes in handy a lot. And then Nielsen Norman Group, they have a lot on their website in general, but on their YouTube page as well. They go into a lot of details about just different methodologies and such. And then, like I said earlier, random searches for UX questions on YouTube are great. So, like, YouTube has so much. And then, like I mentioned before, Coursera, I did these 2 courses, which is User Experience Research and Design Specialization with the University of Michigan, and then the UX/UI Design Specialization with Cal Arts. They're both, I don't remember now how much time they expect, or they are telling you to expect to take on these, but it was a couple months for each one, and it just depends on how much time you put in each day. But it didn't feel too overwhelming if you're trying to juggle working or other things with also learning. These both felt pretty manageable time-wise, so I definitely recommend those. And I think there's a couple other ones on there, like I think Georgia Tech and possibly University of Minnesota, a couple other ones out there on Coursera. I didn't do them, but I'm sure they're at least comparable to these. And then just some books. Every single UX person ever, I feel like, has read The Design of Everyday Things, or at least knows about it. It's, Don Norman is like the grandfather of UX. So that's a good book. Don't Make Me Think is another one that's pretty popular. And you can read through these. But I thought it was nice to like have some books to reference, rather than just taking in so much YouTube videos and courses. It's nice sometimes to just read things. So I just, used my library card and got a bunch of books. And it was kind of fun. It was a lot of these have good storytelling in them. It's not really dry textbook type of books. So yeah, I would definitely recommend any of these. Um, and then, like I said as well, joining UX groups is huge. That's how one of the ways you'll network is joining these groups, joining their Slack channels. Because what I actually learned from my first mentor at UXPA International, he told me that how you're going to get a job most likely is through a Slack channel where someone posts a job that someone at their, where they work is hiring. And then you just talk to that person through Slack. And that's a good way to be able to like, they posted it on Slack in that group because they want someone to interact with them, DM them and talk from there. So I think this is huge for networking, is joining these different groups. You might not go to all the meetups that they have. You might not, interact that much with them. Like I don't interact with all of these on a daily at all, but there's those like they'll have a jobs board in Slack or wherever, and that's where you're going to find some jobs, and then you'll be able to talk to a person directly that is connected to that job. So that's a good way. And then just in general, it's a way to like immerse yourself in the lingo of UX, because we all know there's a lot of lingo, and I think that's pretty important to be able to speak UX, even if you haven't done all the things and you don't feel like you have a lot of experience in certain parts of it. I think if you at least can speak it, and like if you're talking to someone that does UX stuff and they say a certain phrase or a word, it's nice to be able to at least know what they're talking about. And that was actually something else I did, was if I was talking to people in UX, and they said something that I didn't quite know, then I would either ask them if I felt comfortable, or if it made sense within the conversation, or I would just Google it right after. Like I would remember what that term was, Google it right after, and then I had a Word document of just different terms, just because I felt like it was pretty important to at least understand lingo. So yeah, definitely join different groups. A lot of these are more research based, just because that's what I was focused on, but there's plenty of them for design, like UX design, if that's what you're more interested in. There's different Medium articles that list different groups that are UX design based. And so I think you can just Google, UX design groups. So a little bit of background of how I found an internship, because that might be a question that some of you have. And it was networking just about. I basically was on a webinar, and then in the side panel chat, a guy was saying, oh, I need an intern for my business. And what's nice is that it's a UX like learning platform. So my compensation was learning. So that was cool. And he also, I think I mentioned this before, we would do one-on-one calls. So he was a really good mentor. But yeah, I would like help out with, the different buildings of his website and email and like different parts of the startup. And then he would, I would be able to join classes and learn from him directly. So it was a good experience. And so the lesson to that, I think, is that, internships, jobs in general too, it's like you just find someone somewhere. Like it just happens like that sometimes. And people are looking, you know, and what I was trying to do before was to find an internship was I was just like applying wildly and nothing came of that. Like absolutely nothing came of that. So what I learned from that was like it's better to connect with somebody, especially if for me I wasn't a student and a lot of times internships, you know, want you to be a student. And so it was nice to at least talk to someone and then he could decide whether or not he wanted to put me on the team as a non-student intern or if, you know, he really wanted a student to be the intern. So yeah, that's the lesson I got from that. And then I just have 5 tips for finding a job in UX. Make sure you have UX projects that you're working on so that you can talk about them in the time that you have an interview. That was something that when I would interview, people were like, "Oh, you're working on stuff right now," and it just shows that you're building towards it. You're not just like sitting back and waiting for um, the job to come to you or like someone to hire you when they don't really know that you're interested in UX or not. Um, and I'll go into a little bit more depth of that. Another thing is to make a portfolio, which some of you mentioned in the beginning, and I'll go into that in detail as well. But it is an important thing. And then update your resume and LinkedIn to reflect that you're in UX or at least interested in UX. And then network, reach out to people, and then practice interviewing skills. So to go more into depth with having projects that are ongoing, I came up with a personal project, and it was to develop an app. And it was when I was thinking about, what does the world need right now? And it was right after, George Floyd was killed. So it was basically a way of people to talk about race in a way that wasn't combative. That was the app that I, you know, wanted to create. And I went through all of the steps of, I learned, the process of UX. And then I purposely was like, I'm going to try out usability testing. I'm going to try out user interviews. I'm going to try out this. And so I was practicing these methods that I wanted to show that I could do these things. And then, if you don't want to do a personal project, if you don't feel like thinking of one, you can ask if someone needs help, someone that has a business or someone in your family or just someone you can think of that has a business that might need like a revamp of their website or something that is UX related. Just find ways to practice these things. It's great to learn, conceptually, but it's like even better to be able to practice these things so that when you get to that interview stage of a job, you can say, yeah, I actually worked on this project and I did this method. And this is what turned out from that. I learned this. So that's something I would say is try to get either client work or work on a personal project. Um, and then I would definitely say make a portfolio website. And so what I did was I thought of the different projects I had worked on in the past first. And I made a whole like Word document. You might make Excel, however it makes sense for you, but I basically wrote out like paragraphs of what I did in each project. And then I used the other document I had with all the terms, like UX terms on it. And I tried to, put together like in a project, if I did something that was very, very, very similar and basically was user interviewing, boom, like that was user interviewing. So you use the terminology when you're in your case study, when you're like talking about a project that in the past that wasn't technically, you weren't in a technically UX role, but you did something that was exactly the same as, you made a survey. That's something that UX uses, So just stuff like that where it's very closely related and you're able to say, yeah, I did this method. So that's how I basically used past projects in my case studies. And I came up with 4, I believe, from just my past projects. And then I just added those current projects that I was talking about in the last slide. And of course, those were purposely UX projects, so I could, use all the terminology pretty easily with those. Um, and then, in your about, have a really solid blurb about who you are, why you're interested in UX, what values you bring to the table. And, you can talk about this journey that you had so that, potential employers, they're reading your blurb about you and they're saying, oh, okay, she was a business analyst and then this thing sparked for her that she wanted to be in UX. Like, you can tell that story in your about part of your website so that people can kind of get more context to why your portfolio or your resume looks kind of not the exact background. And then I had a blog section, and that actually went really well in a couple of different mock interviews that I did have, and just different people that were giving me feedback on my website. That went really well over for people because they were like, "Oh yeah, it looks like you know what you're talking about, and you have an interest in UX that's more than just you want to be a UX person. You like really think about these concepts and enough to write about them in your own words." And like, so that was something that was extra helpful to have a blog. And if you don't want to, if you don't like writing, there's other things you can do just to make sure that you seem and you show that you are really interested, more than just like, I want to get another job, Um, and yeah, website host and platform doesn't matter, as long as it looks professional. And some people ask, can I just have a PDF? Yes, you can. It's kind of just up to you how you want to do it. I've seen people with PDF portfolios. It's just harder to search for a PDF, right? So that's kind of the give and take of why you would want to do a PDF versus a website. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit of that. And then, as mentioned before, update resume and LinkedIn. And I kind of came across this kind of hill to cross that was, I was still working at another job and I don't want my LinkedIn to show that I'm trying to get into UX just yet. I wasn't ready to display that. Just if my coworkers at the time saw it and would ask a lot of questions. So something you can do is that you just start to put in like skills that are UX in the skills section, and then like different things that aren't like very blaringly UX, so that you can still like pop up when recruiters are searching for UX skills. And then like you can even in your beginning part, your like introduction, top of your LinkedIn, say that you have UX skills, and maybe just talk about your background. Or um, but yeah, if you don't have that problem, then for sure just put in that you're a UX professional. I feel like a lot of people have a hard time putting that they're a UX person when they don't have a job that says UX. But it's bigger than that. You can say that you're interested in user experience. You don't have to say, I work at this place as a UX position. But there's a lot of ways to say that you are in UX. And you can also just say like other phrases. I've seen different people put different phrases that kind of tell you like, oh yeah, this person's interested in UX. Just you can read it in their first blurb on LinkedIn. So and then yeah, let recruiters know, there's that function on LinkedIn too, that you're open to new opportunities, and then you say specifically you want UX roles. So there's different ways to do that on LinkedIn. And then yeah, network, reach out. It's huge. And what I'll say about that too is that people are willing to talk to you. Like, don't be afraid to have that cold message on LinkedIn, or if it's a cold email or whatever it is. Most of the time, people are open to talk. And what I found too in the UX space, it seems like people are even more willing to talk. I don't know if it's the timing of people are more willing to talk because everything's virtual, or what I noticed though was um, most people that I reached out to were totally open. And you can get a lot of, I mean, good connections is one thing, good insights. Um, you know, and maybe that's how you get your job eventually. You just reached out to some person on LinkedIn and they knew somebody that was hiring and they put a good word in, like that might be what happens for you. And especially if you see a job that you're really interested in, definitely before you apply, reach out to someone that works in that department. Search on LinkedIn for people that are in that same department so that you can have somebody refer you. It's huge. It's just, there's statistics out there that are like, I don't remember, but 8 times more likely to get an interview if you were referred, and just all these different reasons why you should try to at least connect with somebody if you're really interested in a job. Um, and then practice interviewing. There's a lot of ways to do that. Participate in mock interviews, ask mentors and friends, practice in the mirror, definitely dress for the role. And then, like, when you're in the interview itself, have curiosity and interest in the person that's interviewing you and in the company. And definitely have your elevator pitch ready, just because almost always the first question is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And that question, can it can just go any different direction, right? So you kind of feel like, oh, I must say everything ever about me. And that can be a lot for the person that's interviewing you. Like, you can talk for maybe 10 minutes about yourself, and that's kind of like overload. And so try to have something down to where you say, what your experience is, what you're looking for, what you would bring to this new job, something really, 4 or 5 sentences max that cuts right to the chase of, who you are and what you're looking for. And it's big. And I've been that person that's talked for 10 minutes. And you can see on the person's face that's interviewing you, they kind of just like either zone out or it's just not good. So try to have something that's prepared and short and simple and gets to the point. And then just a little story about how I found my job at Target. Like I had mentioned before, I had that mock interview through the Interact project, and that interview went well. And like I said before, Allison, who was my interviewer, put my name and information into some of her Slack channels. And then someone reached out to me from that who works at Target. And then she and I, met and kept talking, and she really wanted to hire me, but she didn't have a position under her that was open. So then she referred me to another position at Target, which is the one I'm at now. And so, it was just networking really. And it was really, I was just wanting to hone my interview skills more, and it turned into a job. So, definitely when there's opportunities out there that they're not directly saying like, we're going to hire you from this opportunity, it's still worth, doing it. At the very least, you're going to be able to practice something that will help you get a job later. At the very most, you might get a job out of it. And you also are going to make more connections in that way. When there's opportunities that come about that are, like that, just take them, and you don't have to think twice about it. I was definitely very nervous when I was going to do this mock interview, but then by the end of it, it was really nice to, make a new connection, and then, eventually got a job out of it. So that's a little bit about that. So I'm going to get into some lessons learned. And you can just read through these. I'll just point out a couple of them that I think are super important. Take time to learn and practice. The more you put into it, the more you'll get out. I know we've all heard that before, but it's really true. I feel like I devoted a lot of time to this whole process. And, do what you can. I know you're probably juggling a lot of things, but just every week at some, have some time put towards, either gaining more skills, talking to more people, working on your portfolio, whatever it is, just put some time into it and you'll get rewards from that. And then, have a growth mindset that kind of plays into that as well, that you can learn anything, enough time, patience, and interest. You can learn anything, especially in the world we live in today where you have access to everything on the internet. And so, if you have the mind that you can do it, you will. Um, and then a couple more lessons. Confidence, find your confidence. If you don't believe in you, who's going to believe in you, right? Like if you come into an interview and you don't think you can do it, then it's probably not going to go well. And, I had to find my confidence in UX. And that's when I started to actually do more things. In the very beginning, you don't know hardly anything. So you can't really feel confident just yet. But once at least for me, what happened was once I put together my portfolio website and saw all the things that I've done and really reflected on that, I was like, oh yeah, I feel like I could get hired somewhere with what I've been doing. And then also talking to people too and seeing that goes into find people who see your potential, like talking to more people and them saying oh yeah, you're going to do great. You're going to get the job. You have all these skills. You have this, talking to people that are encouraging and, are in the business that you want to be in and they're saying great things about you, it helps boost your confidence. And then that helps you be able to talk about yourself in a way that, an interviewer person will say, oh yeah, this person is confident in what they're doing. I want to hire them because then I'll be confident in what they're doing, right? So yeah, those are some more lessons. And then just a quick blurb about I'm going to be doing courses coming up. And so these are some of the topics. Definitely going to get into the portfolios more. Going to get into common research methods and practices, how to have a productive job search in UX, how to leverage your transferable skills. So those are coming up. Just stay tuned to any of my, LinkedIn, my website. I'll be putting those out there for people pretty soon. But yeah, that's everything. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute, but also I can look at the chat as well. Maybe I'll look at chat first to see if there's some questions, and then I'll take some unmuted questions if you'd like to do that. Let's see. What are your day-to-day work life look like? Okay, so day-to-day work life. I just started at Target this Monday. So that is a lot of onboarding right now and a lot of learning tools. So a couple of the tools that I'm learning is D-Scout. And this is something to maybe think about looking into as you're learning more. D-Scout is like diary studies. You can do those on there. User testing, which you can do user interviews and different stuff like that. Airtable, which that can be used across anything. It's more of a project management database tool. Just different things like that. I'm learning all the tools. I'm meeting all the people that I'm going to be working with. So yeah, that's my day to day right now. Someone said, tell us all the things. I think I told you a lot of things. Let's see. Do you still have the document with the terms? Any chances you share it with the group? Oh man, I'll have to find it and hopefully I can share it. It's a lot of UX research terms more than general UX or design terms. So if you're looking for those, I don't have design terms as much, but yeah, it's a lot of research terms. So I'll try to dig that up and share. Someone said, I saw aspiring UX designer the other day and thought that was nice. Yeah, that's pretty good too. Um, and I've seen people put like junior, even if they don't have a junior role sometimes. Um, yeah, I mean, you can, I kind of had the thought process of like, I'm just going to put it up there and just, I am a UX professional, let it be known before I was like actually had the job. But I think aspiring is also nice. Someone said, as an introvert, I struggle with networking, which you seem to have really leveraged in your career change. Do you have any specific tips that helped you? Yeah. So I would say like just getting past, because what my issue was like I was afraid of rejection. Um, and I had to get past that. And how I got past that was that I just kept sending things, and then like over time, like sending messages to people, and over time it like went away just because I was like, oh, people actually do respond, and then you forget the people that you had reached out to that didn't respond. Like you just forget that you even reached out to them, so it's like not even an issue. Um, and then for as an introvert, you're saying, I would say, I don't know if this is nice or not for you, but I thought it was easier to talk to people in this time of, only being able to see people through screens. It's like a little bit less awkward in a way because you don't have to like physically approach somebody. Like you're not at a big conference and then you have to walk up to someone and introduce yourself and be ready to talk about things like that. I feel like with like Zoom calls and stuff like that, you can kind of um, be a little bit less forward, you know? Um, so that was helpful for me too. But in general, I would say, like, if you really want to get into networking more, like maybe give yourself a pep talk right before you're about to like do it, and just say, like, you can do this. And I know actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Kevin Lang that I had mentioned before, his YouTube, he had a video, I'm pretty sure, about being an introvert because he's an introvert, and networking. And so maybe check that one out too. I think he had some good comments there. Hopefully that helped with your question. Um, yeah, that was the last question that was written in chat, but if anybody has any other questions, either write them in chat or you can just unmute and ask the question. Either is fine. I know people had mentioned wanting portfolio tips. If there's any, does it seem like I've covered that pretty well, or are there more questions in that? Trying to see what else. There were
Wonder, can someone test unmuting and see if just want to make sure that people can unmute.
Testing.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks so much.
I was trying to be a good librarian and track down that Kevin Lang YouTube, and I can't find it, the one on introverts. But I think I saw that come through my Instagram feed too at some point.
Yeah.
There's that other, I never read, there's a book called, is it Quiet? There's a book about using the power of being an introvert.
Yeah.
I sort of agree with the idea that you do more one-on-ones over Zoom. So there's less like that awkwardness of approaching someone or being in a big group setting. Yeah,
I thought that was super helpful because like I'm more of an extrovert, but like I remember when I would be at conferences and that was the case. It's intimidating, you know, especially if it's someone that you're like looking up to. It's just like, why would they want to talk to me or whatever? Like that kind of thought kind of comes into your mind, but it's a lot easier when it's like you're saying one-on-one Zoom. The stakes are kind of feel lower in a way.
You can always just drop off and blame technology, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my Wi-Fi dropped.
Right.
Battery ran out.
That's a good point.
This was super helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for
I actually have a portfolio question.
Yeah.
Would you say for portfolio, it's good to have case studies and user interface pieces together, or how is it structured?
Yeah. So there's a lot of great Medium articles for that as well. But how I did it was I looked at UX researchers' portfolio pages. Like I kind of just Googled like UX researcher. And how I saw it laid out for that was that a lot of times it was like the good ones, at least. There were some not as good, but like the ones I really liked, it was there were interfaces along with the blurbs. So you would like say step by step of what you did and then have the interface there as well. And also like breaking it up, like instead of it seeming to be like a huge chunk of text about this project, like it's nice to have those interfaces to break up the text, and then also like having headings of different parts of your case study. So like, you know, you might say personas and like you have that heading, and then you might say usability testing and you have that heading that's like large. And so if someone wants to just scan it and they don't really want to, like a lot of times the recruiters are kind of just scan it, then they'll see that you're using the terminology and that you're doing a step-by-step process. And so, you know, having those big headings are nice for someone that wants to just scan it. But yeah, I would say you do put the interfaces mixed in. It's to separate the text so it's not large blocks of text that no one wants to read.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, because I know UX can be pretty broad, because you have the research part of it, you have the UI part of it. I can go into so many areas. So I was just curious.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely like look for the inspiration, because there's a lot of good portfolios out there that are really helpful to see, you know, what looks good. And you know, you'll know because you'll enjoy looking at it. Versus if it's not that enjoyable, then it's probably not a great portfolio. So that's kind of what I did. I just looked for different ones, and then like I said, there's a lot of Medium articles too that's like, this is the best way to do a case study for UX. Like a lot of those are out there, so that's what I did.
I might send you one via LinkedIn. We are connected, because I'd love to get your feedback. You too, Jen, if you guys are okay with it.
Yeah, definitely. Other questions?
It's Allison. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm sort of curious, from your point of view in meeting with different people who I guess are kind of in the mentor category throughout your whole process. So at different stages, people with different experiences, some of those conversations probably have different objectives.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about identifying the right types of questions, or based on the person that you're meeting with, like what, not to sort of sound selfish about it, but like what do I want to get out of it with this person? And then how do I do that? How do I frame the right questions? Like what is some of the process that you do in preparing for meeting with those people, and then making sure that you generate the right conversation based on kind of where you are in the process?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think this actually might help with the introvert question too, is like preparing for the talking might be nice. But what I did a lot of times was however I found the person, I would look into their LinkedIn to see what their background was, just to know like if there was something that popped out to me in their LinkedIn that I would want to ask about. Like, for instance, Yulka, who's from Target, I looked into her stuff and I saw she had a lot of like sustainability work and stuff like that. And so we had that in common. So we talked a lot about that. And then also we talked about Target in general too, because I wanted to learn more about Target. So that's like how I prepared that one. But other more general ones, it was like, for instance, another mentor that I found, he is a researcher at Google. And so I wanted to learn more about how he got there more than anything. And so I kind of prepared questions that were like, how did you get there? And then I also, like, we met 2 or 3 times, and another time that we met, I remember I had liked his portfolio. And so another session that we had was just like me showing him my portfolio and getting feedback. And so, yeah, I think it's a good question too, because it's like you should have some kind of agenda for the person that you're reaching out to, because you don't want the other person as well to feel like their time is wasted as well as your own time being wasted. So, and I think too, it's like when you initially send that message, being clear about what your objectives are of what you want to talk about, so that they can also prepare whatever they feel will help with whatever your agenda is that you're bringing. That's kind of what I did. And sometimes honestly, it was like, I didn't know what to expect. And I just showed up and stayed curious as they told me new things in the moment, which might be a little bit harder to do, but I thought it worked out well in some of those instances where I kind of didn't know what to expect, and then it worked out, that I also still learned something from it.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Any last minute questions? I think I answered all of them in the chat. And if not, just want to say thank you all for being here. And I'm glad that I'm getting good feedback of people saying this was helpful. And yeah, this was a lot of fun for me. Hope you guys had a good time as well. And yeah, this is Interaction Design Foundation Tempe meetup. So if you guys signed up for this, I think you'll be able to know more about other events that come up. And then you can always join them. You don't have to be in Arizona, especially these days. Everything's virtual, and accessible to people. So yeah, join us another time. We do this once a month. And yeah, we're excited that people came on. And yeah, thanks for being here.
And thanks, Saba. It was a great presentation. So
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It's really insightful.
Yeah, no problem.